Hello, everybody. Second day of week 6, getting kind of near the end. Um, oh, better click the button here. Let him in the room. So just a couple things to go over today. Some stuff about audio streams and stuff, and then have some information. Some people would like to uh, go a couple points about making music. There's lots and lots of music out there, so we'll go over a few points about some subtle things in rhythm that can um, help you build suspense or excitement or cool down and change the flow of the game. Just a couple little points about that and how some starting notes on how that goes together. We won't get too deep into music theory or anything here. Then we'll look at audio streams and I just have a couple basic examples. I'm playing soundtrack and then uh, some background noises, some little tips on that, things that have found to be useful over the years. Reminder, after class today, I'll be heading up to Indianapolis for um, yeah, for a bit, and so tomorrow and Friday, there's like all day agendas starting at 7 o'clock in the morning and going all day. So I might be a little bit slower than normal answering the emails, but I will still be checking it regularly, and I will respond as soon as I get the chance. But then I'll be back home on Friday and be able to be back to the normal response rate all weekend long. If anybody has any questions or any trouble while they're putting the next game together, feel free to reach out to me. I guess we can go ahead and jump in here, kind of look at a couple things. I sent out an announcement and we learned just had a couple web pages we can refer to for setting up MIDI sequencing and a little drum machine for talking about the rhythm stuff. I've been doing music for a very, very long time. So the software that I normally would use for it is very complicated and kind of like some stuff about graphic software we looked at. It's probably going to be very, very overwhelming. So I went and found some online ones that just kind of have the bare minimum functionality. So the interfaces are a lot less cluttered. Kind of what those are, so that we can talk about a few things. So it was an announcement I sent out a couple hours ago. So let's start with some just setting up rhythm. Oh, let me reshare the screen and hit that checkbox to share with sound. So share sound. There we go. So both of the pieces of software that we're going to look at today kind of follow suit like this. You'll notice it can be broken down into a grid, and then we'll just kind of fill out the grid for kind of putting spots on the grid. So I'm going with a slower tempo here. Turn that down. And basic ideas, there's 4 beats in a major, and we'll break each one of those down into 4, and that creates a nice little looping pattern. We'll play it, start like some low drum going and another one altering. So basically kind of full American and Ready? Okay. It's a little behind what my is there. Here's the basic kind of flowing along, and you set it music for something like that, something to keep moving. And then there's some nice effects we get by offsetting some of the fire. The term can be syncopation and anticipation. So I took one of these beats, maybe this one, moved it forward. I steady rhythm, and then that beat that came in a little bit early tends to create a pulling effect. So things like that's anticipation. So things like that we use to great effect in as the mood changes. Uh, there's this nice steady beat, players playing along, used to that, and when we want things to start building up, like they're getting close to the boss fight or something. So, doing a slight modification of this sequence, and then one that anticipation where it comes in early, start pulling the character along. Or syncopation, we're running along this nice steady beat, just kind of keeping the pace up, not much. The player gets used to it, and then bring in the second one that's just slightly altered. We play that a little bit later. Here's the different impact it has. So this is syncopation, so it's no longer playing on one of the main beats. Accentuate that even more. Like here. Here, how it kind of changes things. It's not pulling along the same way that when we move the beat forward, it tends to create a pulling effect. And we take just one of the little piece of it, move it backward, or off the beat just a little. It tends to kind of stir things up a little, but not in a suspenseful way. That's the basic idea of how we set up frequency. So you have this basic beat. Um, this particular one doesn't allow for exports. The other one does. So we'll put something on there here in a moment. But you set up a basic beat and then come up with a couple variances that you can throw in occasionally based off triggers in the game when something interesting happens. Usually I'll have like the starting beat. I tend to do 4. Yeah, playing with electronic music is something I do almost daily anymore. I have one of those great big wall size modular synthesizers that sit there and plug out all the pieces. And I usually play with the drum machine and put one beat together, and then I'll make 4 copies of that are each slightly different. So one that slows down a lot, where like half of the stuff's removed. So it's still connected to the original beat. There's not going to be any gap between them whenever they sequence together. Then there's like a cool part without really breaking the music. And then going the other way. So like that was starting beat. Yeah. And then adding stuff to it. Talking about other things occasionally. We usually do 4. So one that's the basic, the starting point, and then one that has things are moved, so it's like a slowdown part. One that had builds excitement, so that's usually where the anticipation comes in, so it's like building up to something. And then one that just kind of goes hard for a moment, the thing that's being built up to, and then they're all connected because they're built. They're slight modifications off the same thing, and that's important for getting them to tie together. And the quickest way to get some sort of an emotional impact in there is to use anticipation and anticipation. As you're getting there, as something exciting is getting ready to happen in the game, you'll take what we saw in our example, which is one of them, move one beat back. Maybe you do it with a couple things. If I take that off. Yeah, we got to erase those. Exciting things just a little bit forward tends to create a building effect. Or to offset it a little, move things just a little bit backwards and alter where the pattern feels like it would be to the player. And then this is a little MIDI sequencing thing that I found can do quite a bit more than just the simple drum machine. We can set different instruments and stuff. Don't have to sign up for an account, and we can export stuff on here. So we'll have multiple instruments playing. So maybe I'll start with some low note on the piano. And if you're following along on this one, you'll if you come up to the top where it's marking out the measures and then the beats within the measure and right click, you can set where the loop starts and ends. So I'll set the end there. And then back at the very beginning, right click and set the start of the loop. And then the little blue button down here turns on the loop. That way it starts playing. And you would just layer up things based off of that different instruments. So I'll start to do that piano. Just think add stuff to it. Progressive. There we go. We're gonna keep it moving. Similar to that. And just build your things up this way, just fill in this grid. And we keep adding tracks, new instruments, and basically the idea about it still do something right here. Instrument. Other than that grid, have something SDEV, we can take and export that. With this very randomly. Export as a WAV file or an MP3, a little bit smaller, probably WAV files that have better quality. Something serious, we want to export a WAV file and that'll work already. Export that and then start applying some of those other things. This one and move it back. Bring that up. Anticipation stuff, so it's going to start build, have some of that offset rhythm. It starts to pull the player along and makes them realize the possibility. We export that as a different file. And in our game engine, they started with the same loop. And it comes around and it's going to line up and it's going to start like things off. We would just set triggers on Windows. That's how we would typically build those, build up game music. That way it's all, we do it as media sequencing instead of live recordings. You can do live recordings, right? That depending on the game, that might fit to just actually have a band sit down and record a song for you, but that can't be modified as quickly. And those are only, I mean, a really short thing. That's the basis of it. And we take all these different pieces. So, oh, these are all from things when I was getting ready. So let me delete that. So this one had just a little bit of it, anticipation stuff worked in. So take this piece and export that. That's not what I'm, click on it to rename it. Export that as the original song. And then maybe come up with some more climactic part where it builds up to something else. Was fairly so, yeah, I had trouble finding it. Part. We could have done that earlier. And then those controls down at the bottom, these make it more dynamic. So velocity is, if you think about like a piano, that's how hard you hit the key. If you hit the key really soft, you're gonna get a soft note. Hit it really hard, it's gonna be louder. Or the thing that's pulled up there now says it's a trumpet, so velocity would be like how hard you're blowing on it. how much force is put into the thing. Pitch bending, you get kind of the notes trailing off. I'll put some. Okay, it doesn't like that on that instrument. There we go. Here, let's do taking it off there, and we'll make it a lot more. The volume. Have that note fade off. And make little adjustments to color it up that way. So, and yeah, MIDI is just the standard for changing musical information. Each note gets a number. So for those that are familiar with the piano, middle C is 60. The B right before it is 59. B flat's 58. So they just get all the notes on get one, just get assigned a number, and then they're just transferred between machines as a single number. And then we can change like what instrument is playing that part. We load in different samples as for the computer to play afterwards. That expression stuff. There's little bits of the stuff at the bottom. You can get it a little bit more flair so that it's not all every note coming through at the same level. Some notes are going to be louder than others, so I could maybe turn those down a little, turn that one up, and turn this one down. Like the trumpet player would be running out of breath by the time they got stuff. And add a little more color there. So you see, mostly just working on it. I'm not going to get into music theory there, but it corresponds to the notes on the piano, and you can change them back and forth between any way you want. And then we have, obviously we're not going to use this one. That was just completely random going over the steps. Then when we export that, we have 3 different variances that can go together. So I don't know. The climax part of the game, there's a lot more happening in the music there. But you see how it's still, they're all built off that same thing. So we take those pieces and then put them back together any way we want in the game engine, depending on what's going on in the game. And we can just set triggers in our game the same way we would set game objects to interact, to switch back and forth between those pieces. So that we're always getting the right emotional impact. Does that make sense? Hopefully enough to get you started on that. There's lifetimes worth of tutorials on music theory on YouTube. If you're not familiar with building music, there's lots and lots and lots of stuff you can look up just to learn about how scales and chords go together. But those are some of the big things you want to think about, especially for games, is that build a bunch of small but related pieces. That way you can jump between them and it sounds like the same soundtrack. You don't have to stop playing one song and switch to a different song that's out of feel. For some games, that other method would work, right? Every game's unique. Get those little pieces together and think about that emotional impact, the emotional pull you can get from the syncopation and anticipation, just little modifications on the rhythm. Pull, get a nice steady flowing rhythm, and pull something early. Go out of the break up that rhythm by going early, and then that creates a pulling effect. For very, very useful when something interesting is getting ready to happen in the game. And then when that interesting thing starts to happen, you pull back into something that's back to the original rhythm. Don't have the anticipation part in anymore, but has something else layered on top of it. So a more climactic part. And then afterwards, after the interesting stuff happens, into a version that maybe is like the original with a few of the pieces cut out, so that it's a cool down point afterwards. But it's a lot of clicking around on a grid is what has become the standard sort of interface for that. Hopefully that'll give you something you can start working around with. Yeah, I think I downloaded all those. So, but also, especially when people are making games, the musicians really like to make music. So if a musician's hired to make some music for a video game, they're probably going to make a whole bunch of things, and then let the development team is going to choose their favorite one, and that musician probably doesn't want their stuff going to waste. Right? If they're a musician, they want people to hear their music, and they already got paid from the one that the game development team actually made. So you can find free video game music for days and days and days. Pixabay is a good one. I go here a lot. The order changes. Is this the one that I downloaded this morning? When I was getting ready, I found one that just. Doesn't quite sound that was sound more recorded music. Is this the one? I found one. The one this morning that just really made it. Old arcade game. Very electronic. I don't know that one. Pixabay doesn't make us log in or anything. All their stuff is free. Then maybe some sound effects. Actually, I'm going to go right to Bixby and go to the home. And under sound effects, search for a couple. So maybe an explosion. It's a good sound effect to have. Want some of that in our game. Sure, I'll grab that. Birds chirping is one that I wanted to I have a little tip for like background noise, something that works kind of nicely for that. $10 of it. I'm gonna go with the short one here, this 22-second one. Is really what I had, was just a little tip to when we go to code those. That gives us a couple sounds to start working with, but we can find sounds for days and days and days. So yeah, don't worry about making your own music for this class, because that takes a little bit of practice. That takes a while. If you're interested in doing that, start getting practice, because it does take practice like any other instrument, right? It's going to be, you're going to make a lot of songs before you start to really consistently end up with songs that you're happy with. Start trying things. But we can jump over to Godot and kind of start working, looking at some of the key points on this. Have anything else on my notes about that? So the basics of MIDI sequencing, always have those grids, and we can change the number of grid spacing. Like pretty much any software we open by default, it's gonna want to give us 4 beats per measure and 4 subdivisions per beat. But we can change that, especially if it's in multiples of 3 instead of 4. That tends to have more of a dance music feel. Things that are easier to dance to if it has divisions of divides up in 3s instead of 4s. Sync bass and anticipation. Yeah, start with the bass piece and make a couple modifications of that, and then have the game engine trigger the game engine bring back what switch between those pieces. I'm just gonna create a new project. I'll call it audio. Normal forward or the compatibility mode work for us. That'll be important when we go to do the builds. We've been keep going to compatibility mode, but that gives us more options. So like mobile devices, build for mobile devices, and VR, which the non-Apple VR stuff is just an Android system. It's just in a different form factor. So we just built an Android app and put it on there. Go for Android devices, websites. That's one we're going to look at in our example of class. Maybe we'll do that today. We haven't really seen how to do that, and I think we'll have a few minutes today to do some stuff with that. I was going to create a scene. I don't really have anything in mind, so I'm going to grab that landscape from the other day. Where was that at? When we worked with shaders, there was a nice big landscape. I'm just going to grab that. So there's something in the world that we can look at. This all we're really worried about is the audio for this one. But I don't want to do audio on a completely blank scene. Have something going on. Do my little click the 3 dots there at the top of the viewport and add in that default light and environment. That we can see stuff. I guess we need a camera so we can see stuff as well. Grab a camera and just have it looking at our world. That way it's not just a blank, I guess. Sure, save that scene. So obviously in most situations, we'd have things starting to happen here, right? We'd have characters moving around. Maybe filling it out. Like this out with forest-like scenes and things are starting to happen, so we're ready to bring our music in. And we play the music from an audio screen player. Audio listener is for positional sounds. If we want something like a waterfall, right? We're not going to hear that waterfall until we get close to it, but it's going to sound different as we move further away. If we're walking towards it and walking away from it, and it's coming from a single place. Our general sound, like background music and sound effects that are not located. Oops. Don't think that'd be out of camera. Those are going to be an audio screenplay. So I'll just start with like the music here. I'll call it music. And have rename that one because we're going to refer to it in the script here in a moment. These over for now. Certainly straightforward. We see we have a lot of options. So first off is what stream are we playing? So we grab that soundtrack music, drop it in there. Different things we can control about it. This is like how, if you think about a like mixing board, to remove things, how are those interacting with how do the controls interact? If we turn something down, like how much does each movement make? Is it sort of a linear scale where no matter where we're at when we move the slider up or down, it's moving the same amount for a given amount of distance? Or turning a knob, right? If you turn a knob the same distance, whether it's real low or real high, it changes it by the same amount. Or logarithmic, where on one end is going to be a larger thing. So at the bottom, turn a long ways to get any difference. The difference, if we put numbers on the knob, the difference between like 0 and 3 is the same as the distance between like 9 and 9.5 when we get to the other, or vice versa. So how are the controls applied? Volumes, fairly obvious. Like how overwhelming is it? So how much does the sound pervade? Is kind of what that is. So when we start adding effects in it, is it like overwhelming noise that's like hard to ignore, or is it just subtle background stuff? You set maximum values so that we said our music's not all going to be the same volume, right? It's going to be ups and downs. Maybe some of the ups are too high, so we don't want to go so much above, allow so much above where our volume is set. Pitch is going to bend the notes. So real old record players were the best example of that, right? The record was created to rotate at a certain speed, and if we would spin the record faster, everything sounds a little bit higher. Or if we slow down and spin the record lower, everything sounds slower. We spin the record slower, everything sounds lower. So we can change kind of what notes are make it sound like a higher or lower key. Playing, here's a song. Pretty quietly. That's glitching out coming back to my speaker. I'm not sure why. I don't know if this is kind of cutting that off or not, but when it gets back to my speaker, it's all jumpy. But when I'm listening to it on my computer here, not so much. Maybe I could put that in the chat file. So let's attach a file. I just put that audio file that I downloaded in the chat. And same thing with the bird's turkey. I can go ahead and put that in there. There's the two I'm using. I don't know if it's just the speaker here, but yeah, when that's playing, it comes back through all choppy. I hope it's not doing that. Hopefully it's coming through somewhat clear on your end. Autoplay, do we just want it to start playing immediately? For background music, we would probably click that, but I was gonna look at it in the script. Screen pause, so we can pause things. You see all the properties that we would normally work at. If we start putting the location in there, like how far away do we have to be from it to hear it? If it is centered somewhere. A lot of the names kind of make sense. Emission angle, so like think about a speaker. Which direction is that speaker pointed? Is it like laid back, pointing upward, or laid down on the ground, so the speaker's going into the ground, and you're just hearing like the after effects of it? That's a good way to think of that. Attenuation filter, this is gonna be, I guess you can think of it like an equalizer. A little bit fancier than an equalizer. Um, we're actually removing frequencies we don't want. So if there's a lot of high end, you can choose some frequency up near the like the higher notes, and excuse me. And then whenever it higher notes get cut off, the other one gets cut off at the base frequencies. The original. So kind of like a filter is kind of like an equalizer, only fancier. Doppler is the effect we get from moving sound. In our society, it's probably most notable is when we drive a little fast, have a siren going, and when they are approaching you, it sounds different than when then after they pass and they're moving away from you. Everybody experienced that before. That's the Doppler effect. So if the source of our sound is moving, or as we move towards our sound, it's going to sound a little bit different. Yeah, it's not a real long reading thing. To add effects to it, like reverb, that's reverberation is just uh, really it's an echo within a certain amount of time. So um, the cutoff happens on time, 29 milliseconds. So if two sounds are more than 29 milliseconds apart, they're going to sound like two separate sounds, an echo. But if they're under 29 milliseconds, those two sounds will blend together into a bigger sound. And like when we're in a room, we're talking, and the sound goes out and bounces off all the walls at different times. But because of the speed of the sound in this room, uh, they're going to blend back together in way less than 49 milliseconds, and someone have a unique sound for the room that I'm standing in. We get into that with that kind of area 3D, which just like in the 2D stuff, we need a area 3D to be assigned to a body. It's going to have the logical body, the physical body, and then an area extends the physical body and includes like the inside of it instead of just the border shape around it. But under area 3D, when we're in that area, we can connect back to the audio buses or get into have control over the reverberation of the sound, the reverb on the sound. But the future in the code, we can get into fancier effects, but that would take a lot to get into today and involves getting into that is a little bit more advanced, and there's a lot to building up some of those things. But once we have that music, we probably refer to it in a script. You can click the autoplay button. I usually just put it in the script. I find that's a little bit easier. I'll set up our normal script. Couple pieces we need. Physics process. So as normal, we just drag that over there. You hold control while you drag it over. You get the reference to it. So that accesses that node, and then we can access any of the properties from there. I'll just put it on like a key press. So like if input is action pressed, I'll do the space bar. You already accept. We'll just have that screen. You could probably guess this already. Just start playing music. And some white space because I don't like typing at the bottom of the screen. Y'all send me to that a couple times. Input is I can just press do I cancel? I use the escape button to stop playing. And yeah, just like play, you probably could have guessed those functions were on there. You can start it playing, stop it playing. We run our game. Not hearing anything until we hit the special. Music started. Stop it when we're done, and then that's also how we connect those. We connect those small pieces of a game together. And if we wanted to do some controlling on it, yeah. So I refer to this. So that music, and then have that cutoff filter. If we decrease by 10 hertz every frame, and to roll up a lot. So that it's rolling off the high end, but the high end's constantly changing, then the music's going to sound different as it's playing. Equalizer changing, accessing that way. It's been consistent with all the other games we've seen in Godot. That was just sort of a random, nice example there. I'll reset that. Set audio play, change the distance might be from it, access all of those. The other one, this is just a little thing I found to be useful. I'm going to create another audio screen player for that. But not just birds, this would apply to any background noises we have, right? We're on a river, there's probably going to be frog noises and insects and all sorts of stuff. I think everybody's been out in nature. And just one thing that I noticed before, and it really bothered me once I noticed it, is when we get like bird chirping sounds, I'll turn them on from the script the same way. So if that is action just pressed, you on down. I'll press the down button to start it. Press that play. And the up button to stop it, but I guess I need a reference to that. So once again, just click and drag while holding control. We'll get your reference, rename it if it doesn't have a nice, easy to work with name. And in real situations, you'd probably go through and you wouldn't be doing it from key presses from the instead of the if this button is pressed, it'd be something relative to your game, right? Like if the player passes a certain checkpoint is almost to the boss, the music needs to change and get more intense. are more suspenseful in some way. Uh, so this is just something I've noticed before. The samples are always really, really good. If you have background noises like birds chirping. That playing? Probably really quiet. Let me turn that up. So there it is, background noise. Now, whenever that starts playing, we get that background noise. But one day I was working on something and noticed that that doesn't like seem right because if we're walking around like this, walking around nature somewhere, the road's not going to be a perfectly set volume. It's going to change. The birds move, they turn around, face different directions. So that sound is constantly changing. So just a little thing I like to do. Oh, wrong button. I'm going to share my screen. Stop this point. I like to add just a little bit of variety to that. And really, the point here is just to kind of think things to think about to add in a touch of realism. It's like, okay, that sample of birds chirping is that's a very nice sample. They're all at that perfectly level volume uh, comes through, but that's not the way birds would sound if we were walking through the woods or um, frogs chirping or crickets. Right? There's going to be variance to it. So I'll create a little variable. Swell sounds like a good name. It's a Boolean, and I'll start it as true. Yeah, that works. So I'll reset this. That went up to 55. And then I'll just kind of mess with that little volume. So like if birds volume dB, which again, if you're not sure what to call it, you can just right click on it in the inspector and copy it. If that is say bigger than 55 or birds volume dB is less than -30, we'll just switch whatever that variable is. It's a Boolean, so if we pass one of those ins, it's just going to go the other way. So from the name, hopefully you can see where that's going. The volume's going to swell. It's going to get louder and louder and louder. Then when it hits that upper threshold, it's going to switch, be false at that point, and then while it's false, the volume's going to get quieter and quieter and quieter. So we need to check that. So if swell, so when it's true, then we want volume. Whoops. Bird stop volume dB to go up by a certain amount. I'm just going to take a guess and see how that works. And if it's false, then you probably hum in the numbers because right, if you're walking through the woods, it never gets totally quiet. So you might want to go to like -100 where it's completely inaudible. But that's going to make the volume swell and go up and down. So like different birds are chirping, right? Some are closer, some are further away. Some are facing towards you, some are facing away, and all the little things. And you really have to play with the numbers to find a good one to balance, because, right, it's doing that every single frame. So 8 might be kind of big. It got really quiet there really quickly. And comes back in, spreads it out. To find a balance, that's just something that, let's try like 3. So right now it starts at 0, and then every frame it's gonna go up by 3 until it gets to 55. So in about half a second, it's gonna be full all the way up there. I was gonna work back to it, so let's do like 1. Um, so over the course of a second, it should fade in. Then over the next second, fade out. Well, I think like a couple seconds to fade in and fade out pretty quickly. And we can do 3. The frame rate might be slower than I thought. I don't know how well it's coming through the Zoom call, but you can hear how it's coming in and out, different volume levels. That can make a big difference on just making the game feel natural. Otherwise, the audio stuff is fairly straightforward. Godot is very nice and consistent about everything. Oh, there's something in the chat I didn't see. Oh, never mind. That's the things happened in the chat. I forgot to admit that. It's consistent with all the Godot is consistent across all their nodes, so hopefully you're getting used to that a little bit and know how to work with those. The reading assignment is about that this week. And then that bird chirping thing, keep an eye out for things like that, right? The audio engineers are going to go out and they're going to get an excellent sample of birds chirping to put online and share with people for a game resource. So when we download those, we have a near perfect sample, but that's not how it would really sound if we were walking through a park or something. So keep little things like that in mind and make adjustments for it. It can make a big difference in the realism or how engaging the game is. Seems those little subtleties that wouldn't really change the game if we left them out, but having them in there makes a big impact. Even if it's not consciously on the player's mind, like super high quality graphics or something. There's a lot of audio stuff in the background like that. Any questions about audio stuff? We have 5 seconds. Okay, somebody's typing in the chat. Okay, I don't hear any questions. If you have any, let me know. 10-minute break sound good? Take a quick break and then look at some other stuff. All right, 1:59. So I guess we can call that 2 o'clock. By the time I finish talking, it'll be 2 o'clock. So we'll get back to it at 2:10. I'll see y'all in just a moment, and then we'll look at building the game once we're finished. So we'll make a quick, cheap platformer, and then put that on a website or something, just to go through the steps.